I had my world turned upside down when I discovered that my wife, Jenny, of nearly 2 decades, had been cheating on me. We never had kids of our own, though she brought 2 daughters into our marriage, who I've come to love as if they were my own. We had what I thought was an open line of communication, something I cherished. We'd talk about everything: work stresses, our thoughts on life, or even our deepest insecurities. Lately, though, Jenny had been working from home, and something about us felt off. Maybe it was the distance the new setup created, or maybe I just didn't want to see the signs. Last night, something as mundane as changing the air filter on our bedroom fan led me to a shocking discovery. I needed her phone to reset the filter alert on the app, and as I scrolled through her phone, a message popped up on her Snapchat. "I'll bring the special toy," it read. My heart sank. This toy wasn't anything innocent. It wasn't part of our usual repertoire. Stunned, I stared blankly at our bedroom ceiling, trying to piece together the reality that my life was not what I thought. Every quarter, Jenny has these out-of-town meetings, supposedly for work, and it clicked that her next trip was about more than just business. I'd heard tales like mine on the internet, seen them in movies, but never thought I'd be the guy sitting there, piecing together his wife's betrayal. I kept my cool, pretended everything was normal, and mentioned I was just fiddling with the router settings. But inside, I was crumbling. I needed proof, needed to know the full extent of this deceit. She left for work early this morning, and I dug deeper. Her phone, left on the dresser, was my gateway to the painful truth. The messages, the pictures, it was all there. A younger guy from her office. They had been careful, switching to apps like Snapchat where their tracks would vanish. I felt a mix of rage and numbness. How could she toss our life away for a fling? I decided it was time for action. I couldn't confront her directly. I needed a plan. First, I contacted the most ruthless lawyer I knew, ready to protect what was mine. Then, I plotted the hardest part of all: the confrontation. I'd follow her on her trip, catch her in the act, and serve her divorce papers right then and there. Sitting in our home, surrounded by the life I thought we built together, I realized it was all a facade. My friend, a thrice-divorced sage in these matters, had advised me to keep a cool head. But all I wanted was to make her feel a fraction of the pain searing through me. The following days were a blur of planning, of gathering evidence and securing my legal standing. As I laid out my suit for the trip, I felt a hollow victory. This was not the life I chose, but it was the hand I was dealt, and I was going to play it as best I could. The day before I was set to fly out and confront Jenny, the tension in the house was palpable. She seemed unusually cheerful, blithely talking about her upcoming business trip as if our marriage wasn't dangling by a thread. I played along, packing my own bag secretly, arranging everything I'd need to catch her red-handed. The sting of betrayal was sharp, but my resolve was sharper. I had to know the truth from the ground up, no matter how bitter it might taste. As I lay in bed that night, the thought of her lying next to me while communicating with him was unbearable. I couldn't stand the sight of her smug smile, the way she'd toss her hair like she hadn't a care in the world. Her phone buzzed continuously on the nightstand. Texts from him, no doubt, plotting their sordid little rendezvous. Every chime was like a hammer to my heart, but I needed to stay focused. This wasn't just about confrontation. It was about reclaiming my dignity. Morning came too soon, and with it, the charade of a loving goodbye. I dropped Jenny off at the airport with nothing more than a peck on the cheek. She sauntered off without a backward glance, pulling her suitcase with an air of someone off on a holiday. The nerve of her, treating our life together like it was some disposable plaything. I drove away, my grip tight on the steering wheel, my mind racing with every possible scenario that could unfold in the next few days. I headed straight to the office of my lawyer, a tough-as-nails woman named Marcia, who had seen more than her fair share of cheaters and heartbreakers. We went over the plan in detail, ensuring that every legal angle was covered. "Make sure you get everything on record," Marcia advised sternly. "Don't let her sweet-talk her way out of this. She's slick, and she'll try." Her words were a cold reminder of the battle I was about to face. I booked my flight, a quiet, unassuming trip to the same city where Jenny's conference was held. The hotel was the same one she'd booked, thanks to the details I'd gleaned from her emails. I had arranged to check in as a guest under a pseudonym, avoiding any chance of detection. As I sat in the airport, waiting to board, I scanned the faces around me, wondering if any of them carried the same secrets as my Jenny. It was a sobering thought that trust, once broken, cast a long shadow. The flight was uneventful, a mere few hours in the air, but a lifetime of brooding over how my world had unraveled so quickly. By the time I landed, night had fallen. The city lights blurred past as I took a cab to the hotel, my heart pounding with every mile that brought me closer to confrontation. Checking in was a breeze, the clerk none the wiser to the storm brewing inside me. My room was on the same floor as hers, just down the hall. It was almost too easy. I settled in, unpacking the essentials and setting up my own surveillance. I wasn't going to barge in. I wanted to catch her in the act, to see with my own eyes the betrayal that had poisoned our marriage. The hours ticked by slowly as I waited. I kept an eye on my watch, timing her usual routine. If she was going to meet him, it would be after dinner, when the conference festivities wound down and the real action heated up. I positioned myself at the bar, a strategic spot that gave me a clear view of the hotel elevators. Drink after drink, I watched as couples and colleagues passed by, laughing and unaware of the drama unfolding around them. Finally, I saw her. Jenny walked into the lobby, her laughter ringing across the room as she clung to the arm of a man who was decidedly not a business associate. They were headed for the elevators, their intimacy not suited for colleagues or friends. My blood boiled at the sight, the confirmation of her infidelity right there in front of me. But I held back, waiting for the right moment to expose her deceit. They disappeared into the elevator, and I knew it was time. I followed discreetly, my heart racing as the elevator dinged at her floor. The corridor was quiet, the hushed tones of the carpet muffling my steps as I approached her room. The sounds from inside confirmed my worst fears, the giggles and murmurs of a liaison that was anything but innocent. Taking a deep breath, I knocked on the door, ready to confront the woman who had shared my life in bed with such callous disregard. The look on her face when she saw me, the color draining from her cheeks, was the only sliver of satisfaction in that heart-wrenching moment. The door swung open, and there stood Jenny, her face a mix of shock and guilt. Beside her, the man from the lobby, just another faceless traitor in a cheap suit. Her initial shock quickly morphed into indignation. "What the hell are you doing here, Mark?" she snapped, her voice dripping with disdain as if I was the one who had done something wrong. "I could ask you the same," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos raging inside me. I stepped into the room, my eyes never leaving hers. The man, realizing the gravity of the situation, mumbled something about leaving and scurried past me, his exit as cowardly as his actions. Jenny's posture stiffened as she crossed her arms, a defiant glare settling on her features. "You've got some nerve, spying on me. What do you want, a show?" "No, Jenny. I came for the truth, something you've been withholding for too long," I retorted, my calm facade masking the turmoil inside. I pulled out the printouts of their messages, the evidence of her betrayal, and laid them on the table. "Is this enough of a show for you?" she scoffed, glancing at the papers with a sneer. "You invaded my privacy. You're obsessed." "Obsessed?" I laughed bitterly. "I'm not the one sneaking around destroying our marriage." Jenny rolled her eyes, pacing the room. "Oh, please, Mark. We've been over for a long time. You just refused to see it. I needed someone who appreciated me, not some paranoid husband who thinks a late night at work is an affair." Her words stung, the ease with which she dismissed our years together infuriating me further. "Appreciated? Is that what you call sleeping with someone else? You have a funny way of showing appreciation." Her laugh was cold, devoid of the warmth I once loved. "You wouldn't understand. You never did." She picked up her phone, typing away, probably messaging him or one of her friends about the crazy situation. I watched her, a mix of sadness and anger knotting in my chest. "So that's it then? You're not even sorry?" "Sorry?" She stopped her texting, her gaze sharp. "Sorry for what? Living my life? You should try it sometime instead of playing detective." The conversation was going nowhere. Every word she said was a reminder of how far gone she was, how little she cared about the wreckage of our past. It was time for me to leave, to start the painful process of rebuilding from the debris of our shattered life. I turned towards the door, my steps heavy, each one echoing the death knell of our marriage. "Where do you think you're going?" Jenny's voice followed me, a taunt in the dimly lit hallway. "Away from here. Away from you," I said without turning back. "I deserve better, Jenny. and I'm going to find it. The door clicked shut behind me, the sound final, like the closing of a book. The walk back to my room was a blur, my mind a whirlwind of memories and regrets. Once inside, I collapsed onto the bed, the weight of the past hours, days, and years crashing down on me. But amidst the grief, there was a spark of something else. Relief. Relief that I finally knew the truth, that I was no longer shackled by my suspicions and her lies. It was a bitter freedom, but it was freedom nonetheless. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again to finalize the divorce proceedings. Marcia was sympathetic but professional, reminding me that the road ahead would be tough but necessary. "You're doing the right thing, Mark. It's time to look after yourself," she assured me. And she was right. The path to healing was long and fraught with challenges, but it began with stepping away from the person who had betrayed me so thoroughly. As I signed the papers, a sense of resolve settled over me. I was going to rebuild, to find happiness again, on my terms, and without the shadow of betrayal hanging over me. As I left Marcia's office, the sun broke through the clouds, a symbolic glimpse of the brighter days I was determined to find. The journey was just beginning, and while I didn't know exactly where I was headed, I knew one thing for sure. I was finally free from Jenny's deceit, and that was the first step toward a new life. Life after Jenny was like walking into a storm without an umbrella. Harsh and unrelenting, but strangely purifying. My days were a mix of routine and rediscovery, each moment spent piecing together the fragments of my identity that had been overshadowed by our marriage. I returned to our home, a place now haunted by memories, to collect my belongings and formally say goodbye to a chapter that had closed with thunderous finality. As I packed up my things, the silence of the house was a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. I came across photos of us, smiling, captured in a time when happiness wasn't just a facade. I didn't know what to do with them. At first, my heart said keep, but my head said discard. It ended up being a painful compromise. I kept a few but discarded most, knowing that moving forward meant letting go. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and lonely dinners. Every knock on the door made me flinch, half expecting it to be Jenny, ready with some new twist or cruel barb. But the knocks were just neighbors, checking in or delivering mail mistakenly sent to a man who was trying to erase his presence from a place he once called home. One evening, I sat on the porch, the sky painting a sunset that seemed almost too serene. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcia, my lawyer. The divorce was finalized. The words on the screen felt surreal, like a distant echo of the life I had lived. "It's done, Mark. You're officially free," she had written. Free was a strange word. Free from marriage, yes, but free from pain? Not quite. The weeks turned into months, and the sharpness of betrayal gradually dulled into a throbbing ache. I took up hobbies I had long forgotten: photography, hiking, anything to fill the void and silence the echoes of Jenny's deceit. Nature became a sanctuary, each trail a step away from the past. As the seasons changed, so did I. I learned that healing wasn't just about forgetting. It was about forgiving myself for not seeing the signs, for not being the man I thought I should have been. Therapy sessions were tough, a mirror held up to my deepest fears and failures, but they were necessary. My therapist, Dr. Ellis, was a patient man who guided me through the maze of my emotions with a steady hand. "You're doing well, Mark," he'd say. "It's okay to grieve, but it's also okay to rebuild." His words were a balm, soothing the raw edges of my spirit. Rebuilding wasn't just an internal process. It involved reaching out, forging new connections, and sometimes rekindling old ones. My sister, who I hadn't spoken to much during my marriage due to Jenny's inexplicable dislike for her, became a frequent voice on the other end of the line. "I'm here for you," she reminded me time and again, and I clung to that lifeline like a man adrift at sea. Slowly, I started to venture back into the world of social interactions, albeit cautiously. Dinner parties felt odd, the sight of couples nudging a pain I preferred to ignore. But there were also moments of genuine laughter, brief flashes where I remembered who I was before all the heartache. One such evening, I found myself at a local bar with a coworker, Paul, who had become a friend. He slapped me on the back, a grin spread across his face. "You're looking better, man. Lighter." "I feel it," I admitted, surprising myself with the admission. It was true. The weight of my failed marriage was lifting, slowly but surely. Here's to new beginnings, Paul toasted, raising his glass. New beginnings, I echoed, clinking his glass with mine. The words felt right, fitting. As we drank, I looked around the bar, at the people and their carefree smiles. It was a world I was relearning how to navigate. A dance I was rejoining, step by cautious step. The journey was far from over. There were days when the grief washed over me with the sudden ferocity of a summer storm. But there were also days when the sun broke through the clouds, promising clearer skies and a path forward. And on that path, I walked, sometimes stumbling, sometimes steady, but always forward. Pushing forward from the remnants of a shattered marriage took more than just time. It took resilience, a quality I was rediscovering within myself. As months turned into a year, the bitterness that had once clouded every waking moment began to dissipate, making way for a cautious optimism. One chilly fall morning, I decided to take a significant step, selling the house that Jenny and I had shared. It was too full of memories, too steeped in our past life together. The decision wasn't easy. Every room echoed with laughter and arguments, with dreams built and shattered. But as I signed the paperwork with the realtor, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a symbolic yet tangible step towards a new chapter. The house sold quicker than I had anticipated. As I packed up the last of my belongings, I stumbled upon an old photo album buried in the back of our closet. It was from our early years, a time when Jenny's smile was something I looked forward to every day. Flipping through it was painful, yet necessary. It reminded me not just of what I had lost, but also of what I had survived. With a deep breath, I closed the album and placed it in a box labeled Donations. It was time to let go. Moving into a new apartment felt like regaining a sense of self that I hadn't realized was lost. The space was mine alone, decorated to suit only my tastes, filled only with my choices. I relished in setting it up, each piece of furniture a declaration of my independence. My new routine became a solace. Mornings were for coffee on the balcony, overlooking the park where families gathered and dogs played. Work was a distraction, but a welcome one. My colleagues, who had been supportive through everything, seemed to notice a change in me. "You're looking good, Mark," Paul noted one afternoon as we grabbed lunch. "Seems like the move was good for you." "It was," I agreed, taking a bite of my sandwich. "Feels like I'm finally moving forward, you know?" Paul nodded, understanding flashing in his eyes. "Moving on is the only way to move forward," he said, echoing my thoughts. The sense of community at work grew stronger. I volunteered for projects, stayed late when needed, and gradually, my professional life began to thrive as well. It was during one of these late nights at the office that I met Erin. She was new to the company, a transfer from another city looking for a fresh start, much like myself. Erin was different from Jenny in every way. Where Jenny had been volatile and self-centered, Erin was calm and considerate. We started spending more time together, initially just as colleagues, then slowly as friends. Our lunches became a regular thing, and I found myself looking forward to our conversations, to her smile. One evening, as we walked out of the office together, Erin stopped by the food trucks parked nearby. "You've got to try the tacos here," she insisted, her enthusiasm contagious. I laughed, a sound that felt strange yet fitting. "All right, let's see if they're as good as you claim." They were, and that evening marked a turning point. As we sat on a nearby bench, eating and talking, I realized I was happy, genuinely happy, for the first time in a long time. The months that followed were a blur of new experiences. Erin introduced me to hiking, something I had never really tried before. Each trail challenged me physically and mentally, pushing me to my limits and helping me rediscover a strength I had forgotten. One crisp Saturday morning, as we reached the summit of a particularly challenging hike, I looked out over the vista, breathless and exhilarated. Erin stood next to me, her hand finding mine. "This is beautiful," I said, not just about the view, but about everything at that moment. "It is," she agreed, squeezing my hand. "And there's so much more to see." Her words resonated deeply. There was so much more to see, to experience. I was no longer defined by my past, by the pain Jenny had caused. I was defined by the choices I made now, by the future I was building. As we made our way down the trail, I felt a profound sense of peace. The path ahead wasn't just a trail winding through the woods. It was a metaphor for my life. There would be obstacles, moments of difficulty, but there would also be breathtaking views and stretches of easy walking. Erin and I grew closer, our relationship developing naturally, grounded in mutual respect and shared experiences. She wasn't just someone I spent time with. She was becoming an integral part of my life, a partner in the truest sense. Life after Jenny was not just about surviving, it was about thriving. And as I looked forward to each new day, each new experience, I knew that I had not only moved on, I had moved up. Rebuilding from the wreckage of my marriage with Jenny had been a journey of ups and downs, but one that led me to a place of newfound strength and happiness. Erin became a significant part of my life, her presence a constant source of comfort and joy. Together, we navigated the challenges of blending our lives, each day affirming that love and trust were still possible. One evening, as we watched the sunset from my balcony, Erin turned to me, her eyes reflecting the warm hues of the sky. "Mark, I've been thinking," she began, her voice soft yet resolute. "I love the life we're building together, and I want to take the next step with you." Her words echoed the sentiments I had been feeling for some time. "I feel the same way, Erin," I replied, taking her hand in mine. "Let's make it official." A few months later, surrounded by close friends and family, we exchanged vows in a small, intimate ceremony. The day was a celebration of love, resilience, and the promise of a future untainted by past betrayals. As we stood together, hand in hand, I realized that my journey through pain had brought me to this beautiful moment. Life continued to unfold in wonderful ways. Erin and I traveled, explored new hobbies, and deepened our bond. My relationship with my stepsons remained strong, and they accepted Erin with open arms, grateful for the happiness she brought into my life. Reflecting on my journey, I saw how far I had come, from the depths of betrayal to the heights of new love. Jenny's infidelity had shattered my world, but it also set me on a path of self-discovery and healing. I learned that even in the face of profound hurt, there was always hope for a better tomorrow. As Erin and I walked hand in hand into our future, I knew that the best chapters of my life were still being written. The pain of the past had given way to the promise of a brighter, more fulfilling future, and in that promise, I found peace, joy, and a love that was truly enduring.